Good day. I want to do a demonstration on the app that I built using PHP Laravel framework and showing the Gang of Four patterns that we use, Gang of Four design patterns that were used in the app. And Laravel framework is a combination of various design patterns, and amongst those design patterns is we can find some of the Gang of Four patterns um, applied in the app. Also, um, I'll also show the web API calls, demonstrate the web API calls that was attached also to the app. So the app is there's a website, there's a web application site where the user can have access to the app, and there is the API side, the API where the app can make API calls. And so I'll be demonstrating that on this video, and I'll just talk briefly on the Gang of Four patterns that was used. I'll highlight briefly on the Gang of Four patterns that were used here, and one of them is called the builder pattern. And the builder pattern is a pattern that has a goal of creating simpler reusable objects. So the example here that we are seeing is called the manager class. And the job of the manager class, and in this app here, the manager class is an abstract class actually. And the manager class is responsible for creating a particular driver implementation based on the app configuration. A driver implementation based on the app configuration. So there are several classes that inherits from the manager class, and the example here is a session manager. One of them is a session manager, and the session manager here takes care of authenticated users. It builds the sessions by calling the driver creator from the parent class. You get it? So the session manager um, creates a session of authenticated user, and if we look very closely at the code, you discover that there is there is a function that sort of like there's a function called the driver. Looking at this manager class here, you discover that there is a function called the driver, and there's also an abstract function called get default driver. And you can see now that on the session manager, this session manager implements the get default driver too. And looking closely at what was written inside this place, is all about managing the session of the users. All right. Then another design pattern, Gang of Four design pattern that was used is called the factory pattern. And the factory pattern um, all starts from a particular class called factory. And what we're using the factory okay, the factory pattern is just let me just talk about the factory pattern. Is a creational pattern which uses factory methods to deal with problems of creating objects even without specifying a static class, which means it can create objects dynamically at runtime. So at runtime here, we're going to be creating dummy datas, and the application itself is making use of two major tables. The first table is the users table, users that get registered. The second table is the message table, where messages are being stored. And so when we use a factory pattern, when in the process of testing our app, we want to use the factory pattern to we'll use the factory to um, create dummy data for the messages and for the users, so that we don't need to go through the stress of creating those messages manually. And so that's what we'll be doing on this app. So the third one is called the facade. It's called the facade. And facade is all about aliasing. Facade is all about aliasing. And so on this particular um, um, on this particular web program, on this particular web program, before I talk about where it was being applied, facade pattern is the pattern helps you to hide complex implementation of an object, of implementation of a class, to get an instance of it. So if you come over to this area here, you'll see that there is a class called facade. Now, when you go over down to, let me see if I can get this thing quickly. Files are too much. Um, a minute. All right. So when we go to the config folder is what we call the app.php, and here it contains a lot of classes where they use an alias for each of the classes here. So we can have, like, when we're going to be using validator class, route class, and the rest of it. And the facet, this is what the facet pattern is all about. It's all about hiding the complex implementation of a class to get an instance of it. Okay, so these are the gang of four patterns that have been applied on this application. And so I move straight to demonstrating the API calls. And so I'm going to start with the postman. And the first thing I'm going to do here, before I do that, um, I want to check our database. Now, the database I'm using two databases here. This one, file tracking, is for the main app. So, but for the purpose of testing, I decided to create another database where I can use it. And so, examining the database, looking at the messages, is empty, and also the users also is empty. So right now we'll go straight to the postman, and the first thing we have to do here is that we want to because we're going to apply create, read, update, and delete. So first, let us create new users. and I want to create new users. First thing I have to do here is to register a new user. Alright, write this. Okay, register a new user. Alright, while this is loading, okay, now the first thing we have to do here is to register a user. I go over to my body, the body part, and write a JSON data that I will submit to, I will send as a request. And so I'm posting this in JSON format. So the first user I'm going to register is George Obina with email and password. Now I want to highlight here that the email and the password, they are all validated. Now if we come over here, we applied validation to it. Go over to my controller. You will see here we have register, and this is where I made the rules that here the name must be required, the email must be required, the password must be minimum of 4 characters. And so if I use 3 characters here for registration and I send, you can see that we have what registration failed, and the message there is what the password must be at least 4 characters. So I just use 1 2 3 4 and I send. Yeah, and I've created my first user here. Now I also want to create another user called promise Orega promise at gmail.com, and I use this, create another user. Alright, created another user, and so I want to get, now I want to um read from the database everything that is in database. And what I have to do here is to request for all messages. So when I request for all messages, I send. Yeah, okay, no, not all messages, all users, sorry, all users. um okay, I think that particular part of requesting for all users is missing. I only added a request for all messages, but if you come over to this to the database and I check for the users, we have this that we just added the the API. So now the next thing we want to do, I also want to demonstrate login through the API. And so when the user logs in, he receives a token from the API. If it's correct, if the user details is correct, he receives a token. And so we're going to log in through this email, george@gmail.com, with password 1234. Send. And you can see that we have message, and the message is a token, a JWT token. Now we go further, and the first thing we have to do is we want to compose a message. That is another create, also demonstrating another create. So we want to compose a message over here. Now the message from george@gmail.com to promise, and I'll say do not reply. And I'll say this is a testing message from the body. I can still go ahead to upload a photo. So I upload this, send. All right, say message sent. Right now, if I want to see all messages, if I click on request for all messages, I request for all messages, send. Yeah, so this is the first message. Do not reply. This is a testing message, and this is the particular file, and the file that was uploaded. Okay. So now let's go ahead. Now next I can do right now is I want to update. I want to also demonstrate an update. And so, but apart from demonstrating an update, also I can also, if I check, let us see whether we can read the first message. Let's see whether we can have access to the first message via the API. And what I'm going to do here is I'll check for the route, and we have view slash the ID. So what I'm going to do here is to view it. So I just view slash one send. Alright, so it still gives us the same thing. Right now we want to do an update. We're looking at an update. According to my route here, if I want to update, I use the update with the ID. So that's what we have here. We have update slash one, which is the ID. We want to update the first message that we added, and so I send. Okay, not really. That was the wrong way to demonstrate. Actually, what I have done in the past here was I had a subject. I wrote a new subject message, simple message from Obina, and this is what the text from Obina, but I can still re-update it again. If I said this is a simple message from Obina, and I say updated, and I come here and I said this is an updated text message from Obina, and I send. I could see that what we have it here is an updated. So if I go back to view all messages, and I send to check all messages, I just have one message, then we have this. Okay, now what I would like to do here is I'd like to generate some dummy data, some dummy messages also here. So what I'm going to do here is I open this, and from here, this is where we generate our message from the factory and also the users. But what I'm going to do is to generate only the message. So I'm just going to recall a command for database seeding. So that is dbseed. Enter. All right. Now we have the seed has been completed. So if we go over here and check the messages, could see that there are more messages that were generated, more messages here. Okay, now going over to the postman, if I request for all messages, you could see that one we have this a lot of messages going on here. Now next we want to do here is I want to delete the second message. So demonstrating delete. Now the my route says that what if I want to delete, I will say delete slash the ID. Now the second message is with ID 2. I send. Message has been deleted. So what I can do now is to see whether the message is still there, which is the second message. So I try to view for all messages, send. We have the first message. Let's see that we have the second one. We don't have the second one now, we have the third one. So this is all about create, read, update, and delete. Now quickly I'll go over to the testing the application, and the first test we're going to carry out is the database test. And the first thing I'm going to do here is to carry out the database test. Testing here. Now looking at the database test here, what we want to test is that we want to see whether a user there is a user called promise. And so if you come over to users here to check whether there's a user called promise, there is a user called promise. So but let's assume now that maybe I am looking for another user. Let's check whether a user now the test here is all about checking whether the database has a particular stored value. So if I say emeka@gmail.com and I write the database test, alright, you see that it failed, the test failed. The reason why it failed is because it says that what failed asserting that row in the table matches the attributes Emeka. So it gives us the rows that we can find, and so rewriting this george@gmail.com, writes the test and it passed. Alright, the second one I'm going to do right now, which is the final one, is to check whether users can register and they can be authenticated. Whether a user can register and it can be authenticated. Now now first what we're going to do here is, now take note of this, that when I'm doing this right now carrying out this test, because I'm having this right here, refresh database, what will happen is that it will wipe off everything on my database. So we'll go ahead and carry out the test. App test. Why did it fail? The reason why it failed is because there is no user. There's no user at all. So there's no user on the database at all. And so what needs to be done here is that because there is no data on the database, we will have to create a dummy user from the factory. And it's like from the factory, we create a dummy user and authenticate that dummy user and see whether the user create a dummy user which is registering, then authenticate the dummy user and see whether the user can access the dashboard, because this is a particular route on in the main application. And so we run the test again. All right, so you can see that it did what, it passed the test. So now I just want to show you my class, um the class diagram that was generated. Actually, the reason why I should have shown it to you on from my browser, but the reason why I done it before, and I took a snapshot on my browser, and it generated this class diagram. So this is a class diagram for it. So that's for that. Now this is also the application itself. This is the login side of the application for the Benin Local Government Council. And so if I want to access this particular app, what I have to do here is that I'll just have to change, because I'll change the database because I was using a testing database. So I use the main database, which is file tracking, and I log in. There is also some users on the database, on that particular database, which is file tracking users. Then we already have some registered users here, and so if I sign in with this particular user, as a dashboard. And so this is a previous message that has been um, sent to this particular user. During the message here, we have the file that was uploaded. Okay, so that's all for this. So thank you very much.